Hi, welcome to Intro to Ethics, Phil 130, Oakland University. This is for the two sections online, section 9 and 10, CRNs 12034 and 14217 respectively. Today, well, I thought I would record this video to introduce myself. My name is Grant Yoakum. I'll be your instructor this semester, and this will be actually the method by which you'll get most of your instruction. I am on campus this semester in addition to teaching these two online classes. I'm there Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I have regular office hours between 1:15 and 2:15 on those days. According to the syllabus and according to me, because I'm saying it, you can find me in O'Dowd Hall, room 319. So even though this course meets virtually, please contact me with any sort of difficulties. I'm a big believer in solving problems before they become problems. So you've got my email address here, yoakum@oakland.edu, and you can get in touch with me through Moodle as well. So this is an online class, and we will be running this class on the basis of each of the figures that we're studying. You will get a YouTube lecture like this one that you're responsible for. Note that these YouTube lectures are not a replacement for reading the textbook. They will refer to the textbook, but you'll be expected to understand both the lecture and the reading. In the video lectures, what I'm going to try to do is illustrate this fairly complicated material simply by way of common sort of plain language examples that hopefully you'll be able to relate to in some respect or another. In addition to the lectures that I will be posting about the material that we're covering, I'll frequently post additional supplementary material. Other philosophers have actually recorded interesting topical lectures that relate to what we're studying in this course. I'll post some of those, occasionally a news article that's relevant to some sort of issue that's come up in this course will come past my desk. I will post usually a link to that or maybe a PDF scan of that news article, and it'll be there for our discussion. The discussion in this course will happen by way of the discussion forums. There will be 6 of those relating to each of the sections of the course. Anyhow, I'm getting ahead of myself. So, a few words about why I'm the instructor of the course rather than a guy taking this course. Well, first off, I'm Canadian, so I'm a commuter to the States, to Oakland University, where I've taught. This starts my 10th year. Man, time flies. Anyhow, so I've been teaching for Oakland University for 10 years. I've been well, this is my 10th year. I am now over 10 years in terms of teaching experience for colleges and universities in the sort of greater Detroit area, which takes into account Windsor as well. I did my undergraduate training at the University of Windsor. My graduate training, my master's degree comes from Brock University in St. Catharines. It's about 20 minutes out of Niagara Falls on the Canadian side, and I'm currently pursuing a PhD, which takes a look at some of the material that we'll be getting to towards the end of this class. I'm sort of an urban theorist, so don't be surprised if a lot of my examples have to do with living and acting and relating to being within cities. I'm also sort of a pop culture theorist too, so you'll see lots of movie references and television references and pop culture references as well. So hopefully you'll be able to relate to that. Now, the first good chunk of your syllabus here is just boilerplate that they make me put on here. It's good stuff. It gives you the course catalog description and the course objectives for general education. Right? So this is boilerplate, but nonetheless, this is when I design a course what I have to conform to. So, the course catalog description, which you found this course, so you've probably already found, I'll just read it quickly. It's a 4-credit hour class, and major ethical analysis of right and wrong, good and evil from Ancient Greeks to the present appeals to custom, theology, happiness, reason, human nature will be examined as offering viable criteria for judgments on contemporary issues of moral concern. Offered every semester, satisfies the university general education requirement in Western civilization, knowledge, exploration area, right? So basically what they want me to do with this course and what I've done with this course is provide a historical analysis of ethical theory starting from the ancient Greeks and coming up to, generally pretty contemporary in terms of philosophy theory, right? So we will start a good 2,500 years ago and end a good 60, 50 years ago, right? So that's the time period that we will be spot checking with the texts for this course. There are a few things that they want me to make sure you are able to do. First off, I'm supposed to introduce students to the important historical texts and ethical theory, and I think I've got a good sampling here. To show students how theories about ethics have developed over time, and that's the historical analysis that we'll be doing in this class. In addition to Western civilization knowledge area, this course also introduces the cross-cutting capacities of effective communication and critical thinking. As such, it accomplishes the following further objectives: to develop students' facility in reading and analyzing the theories learned in class. So yes, you have to read the textbooks. And yes, you have to show through some sort of writing that you have come to some sort of comprehension. So that leads to this next cross-cutting capacity to develop students' facility in writing creatively and clearly about ethical questions. And I will say that on exams, if students are having trouble, it's usually related to their ability to communicate what they understand about the readings and about the theories effectively in terms of their written communication. So this will be sort of a writing intensive course. As you see, I'm obligated to make it. And then finally, to help students learn how to apply ethical theory to concrete situations. So this is why my plain language, everyday, almost anecdotal kind of examples are somehow relevant and pertinent to the course, because at that point we wind up applying the theory. Now, you're probably panicking because I've listed 7 textbooks here. I'm actually not sure if the bookstore understood that I wanted 7 textbooks or if we lost one of the mill textbooks. But nonetheless, I'll look into that the first week and send an email around and determine whether or not they got my order correctly. There's enough here, in any case, to determine whether or not, to determine our understanding of mill, even if just On Liberty is the textbook that we've gotten, and not additionally the utilitarianism. So in any case, we're okay. Right? So it's either 6 or 7 textbooks, which are Plato's 5 Dialogues. You see, these are Hackett translations. These are old translations that have gone off their copyright, so these books are generally dirt cheap. Right? So I'm currently a student, and I know how expensive textbooks can be, and really the alternative, just give me a second, is a big anthology like this one here, which has probably 50 different theorists and would probably cost you somewhere in the $90, $110 range. And what you get from a big anthology like this one is, in this case, these 2 theorists, McKinnon and, I can't even pronounce the last name there, but nonetheless, it's their take on the theorists that we're going to study. So what I do instead of that is I design my course around these, and it's a fairly weighty list of primary texts, starting with Plato's 5 Dialogues, only 2 of which we'll be reading. Moving on to Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics, this should be somewhere in the $10 to $12 range. It's a seminal text in ethics, and we will just be looking at books 1, 2, and 3 of the 10 books that are in this particular text, and not even all that far into book 3, so your reading's not going to be too crazy. Immanuel Kant's Grounding to the Metaphysic of Morals, we will be looking at sections 1 and 2 of this. John Stuart Mill's Utilitarianism, if they ordered it, and you see how skinny a book it is, we'll just be looking at a couple of sections of that. And just section 1 of, again, a very skinny book, Mill's On Liberty, which actually relates his ethical theory to his political theory nicely. So that's the first 2/3 of the class. Nietzsche's Beyond Good and Evil, which is a key text for my dissertation research, which actually is going to call into question just about everything that we've studied before it. So we'll be just looking at a couple of sections of that, and about half of Jean-Paul Sartre's Existentialism and Human Emotions, which is actually selections from some of his larger works. And that will get us up to the 20th century, in fact, right? So when was this published? I should know this off the top of my head. Oh, well, it doesn't matter. Anyhow, that's what we will be studying in this course, and yes, unfortunately, you need all the books, right? But, like I say, if I did this, you would have, yes, one book, but it would cost you maybe $110 versus what I've done, which should be somewhere in the $50, $60 range, plus you're reading primary text rather than an interpretation of a primary text. So, right, that should hopefully, as cheaply as possible, give us a lot of range with regard to what we can study in this course. Now, generally what we're doing in this course is we're trying to ask the question, on what basis are we going to be able to tell people they should do X rather than Y, right? So these theories, these ethical theories, are interestingly theories that try to limit freedom. They limit freedom, but they presuppose freedom right at the beginning, right? Because it makes no sense to ask the question, should I lie? Should I cheat? Should I steal? Should I murder? Should I do all of these kinds of actions? The question should depends on freedom, depends on this sort of notion that we can act in a way other than that which we are inclined to act, right? So ethics starts off by assuming that we're free and asking the question on what basis and by what standards we are obligated somehow to limit our choices, limit our actions within an acceptable range of behavior, right? So really what an ethics course is a course that examines how best to manage our freedom. Right? So hopefully we'll be able to ask and answer a lot of really interesting questions. And like I say, we'll have 6 figures. Socrates, it's a funny, squishy thing that goes on between Socrates and Plato, because Socrates himself never wrote anything down. All we know about Socrates is some historical data plus the accounts offered by Plato. And we'll look at an account of his trial, and we'll look at an account of an argument that he purportedly made while he was in prison. So those are the 2 Socratic dialogues from Plato that we'll be reading. So that's theorist number 1. Aristotle, who was the teacher of Alexander the Great, who was the student of Plato, who established the second Western university. Right? So this institution that we're relating to has sort of a lineage that dates back from Plato and Aristotle, right? So they're the people that established initially a university. Aristotle's also the coiner of the term physics, He's the coiner of the term metaphysics. He's the first to really lay out a complicated understanding of logic. The Nicomachean ethics is a virtue ethics approach, and he's just an all-around good theorist, right? So we're going to look at one of his seminal works, the Nicomachean Ethics. Following that, we jumped several hundred years to the modernist period with Immanuel Kant and his grounding to the metaphysics of morals, which largely is a rationalist kind of account of the notion of duty, um, and kind of a pain to read. I'm going to brace you for that right off the bat. But nonetheless, I have ways to get us through and to develop an understanding of the important points within this argument. But nonetheless, it's going to be a challenge to read. After that, Immanuel Kant's other is John Stuart Mill, who is a utilitarian and has basically a simplified definition of happiness, which amounts to pleasure or the absence of pain, that should be held up as a standard for calculating ethical value. The debate between Kant and Mill is pretty important and pretty well the cornerstone of modern ethics, so we'll be taking a look at that. And then we will move into, with Nietzsche and Sartre, sort of an account of what some people refer to as postmodern ethics, right? That attempts to lay bare a lot of the presuppositions of what came beforehand. Both in Nietzsche and Sartre, we'll see pretty mature criticisms of both Kant and Mill. So hopefully it'll be a well-rounded course, and we'll get a lot out of it. All right. So in terms of how I'm going to evaluate you for this course, there are basically 4 sections: midterm 1, midterm 2, a final exam, and a discussion forum, right, which you will be participating with each of these figures. All right. So in terms of evaluation, if you flip over to page 2 of the syllabus, you'll see an evaluation section, and basically 2 sections under that: the discussion board or the discussion forum. Each figure we discuss will be accompanied with a discussion topic posted to Moodle. So I'll have a specific directed sort of question that I will pose to you, and you will then engage in a discussion amongst one another virtually through a Moodle discussion forum about that question and about that theorist. All right. The discussion board is worth 10% of your final grade, so it's a great way to turn B's into A's, C's into B's, D's into C's, what have you, right? There are enough grades there. And I leave all of the discussion boards open until the end of the class, until exactly the date, the time, the moment that the final exam is due, right? So this is 10% of your final grade that you will have access to for the entire semester. And this is also an interesting point. The discussion board, you don't so much have to be right. You don't so much have to have the right answer. Largely, what we're intending to do with the discussion board is generate a long-running, interesting, challenging, critiquing kind of conversation. So it's perfectly acceptable for you to pose some sort of a problematic or a question through the discussion board or the discussion forum for each of these figures. So you're expected to enter into debates, offer criticisms, and generally discuss the nuances of the theoretical positions of each of these figures via this Moodle forum. And I will say, in the past, I've seen a lot of people's grades bumped up by this discussion forum, but if you ignore it all semester long or forget to do it altogether, I've seen a lot of very good grades diminished significantly by their failure to engage in this discussion forum. So stay on top of it. What I do when I set these up in Moodle is force everybody to be subscribed. So somebody posts to your forum, you'll get an email notifying you that there has been some new development in the conversation and the discussion, right? So you'll have plenty of reminder throughout the semester. Right? I do that just to keep people on top of these forums, and I get the emails too. And interestingly, I'm teaching 3 sections of ethics and 1 section of intro this semester. So I get and read all of the topics and discussions. And I try to leave the discussion forum to you guys, but every now and again, if I think it's appropriate, I will actually enter into the debate and sort of clarify something, whatever comes up, basically. Right? But I am paying attention, I am monitoring. That said, at the end of the semester, a grade out of 10 points will be assigned based on the frequency, relevance, and quality of your participation. For example, posts like, I agree, period, and that's the end of the post, or this is stupid, period, and that's the end of the post, without additional comments will be insufficient to garner a decent grade on this forum. So I'm looking for discussion among students with regard to the course material and not merely personal reflections. The wrong place to talk about what you did over the weekend, or the wrong place to have a private conversation or a personal conversation is via this forum. Right? This is an instructional resource. I have a discussion board policy in the policies section that should be the discussion board for this course is intended and should only be used for discussion of the course material. Procedural questions and general comments about the course, for example, when are we getting our grades back, how did everybody do on that exam, etc., 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 it's the wrong place for them. Right? They should be directed to my email or should be discussed in person via office hours, class meetings, or personal correspondence with one another. Right? So the way to address those concerns is to address them to me or to do it privately. This is a shared instructional resource. So that's it. What's the next thing I say here? All right, this is an instructional resource and should not be treated like a blog or a more general forum. I will add to this policy that any sort of derogatory. I know we're entering into debates. We're entering into debates about ethics, and we're entering into debates about ethical theory that tries to tell you what you should do. Right? So these are likely to get a little bit heated throughout the semester. Right? I will say that any sort of personal attacks or derogatory comments will be removed from the forum, and the student who issued those personal attacks or derogatory comments will be penalized for that. So keep it clean, keep it classy, right, is all I'm saying about these forums. Right? So that's what you should be doing with this 10% of your grade. So we're starting on the small bit of your grade and then moving to the exams. So that's what's going on with the forums. Now the exams, this course is divided into 3 sections. So the first section will be Socrates and Aristotle. Right? So when we get through the Socrates and Aristotle section, you'll see in your tentative reading schedule that I have particular weeks, like for example, February 3rd through 7th and March 17th through 21st and April 16th through 18th, slotted for review. In those weeks, what I will do is post an additional YouTube video which goes over the exam questions. You'll be getting these exam questions in advance of the exam, 5 days in advance, at least, right? And I will post a YouTube video which will go over my expectations, break down the questions, tell you why I think it's an interesting question, and I can tell you students in the past have found these very helpful, right? So that's what will be going on in those review weeks. I'm not going to be, while you're writing this exam, posting additional material for you to fall behind on while you're concentrating on working on the exam. So the exam week will be the exam week, and you'll have time to concentrate on that exam. So at that point, you should be emailing me or coming to my office hours. God, come to my office hours. You know, it's boring if I just sit there and get my own work done. So please, I'd like to actually meet some of you in person. So come to me and talk about this material. That's when you should be engaging with these questions and discussing. And I'd be happy to discuss any of these questions or the material generally for you in those periods, or any time for that matter. So there will be three exams. The first exam will be Socrates and Aristotle. There will be three questions for each of the figures, totaling to 6 questions, graded out of 5 points each, totaling to 30, which counts as 30% of your final grade, which makes your math and my math very, very easy, right? So the first exam will be 3 questions, probably 2 on the apology and 1 on the credo, judging from my history, and 3 questions on the Nicomachean Ethics. Surprise, surprise, there are 3 books that we're looking at in the Nicomachean Ethics, so you can expect a question for book 1, book 2, and book 3. And after we've addressed the Socrates and Aristotle, we're done with them. All right? We move on to the next section. The second midterm will be Immanuel Kant and John Stuart Mill, right? So it's basically 3 books, right? So Immanuel Kant, we're looking at 2 sections and 3 formulations of what he calls the categorical imperative, which we'll unpack, and don't worry about it, it's not that difficult. Likely there will be 1 question on each formulation of the categorical imperative. And there you go, you already know what your exam questions are likely to be. And John Stuart Mill, there will be likely 2 questions about utilitarianism and 1 on liberty. Or, like I say, I'm not sure if the bookstore understood what I was asking them to do. If we don't have the utilitarianism book, oh well, there will be 3 questions on liberty. All right, so we will determine that as we go. And then likewise for the final exam, right? So these are not cumulative kind of exams. They are, I've already tested you on Socrates and Aristotle, so let's move on to the new material, right? So they're not comprehensive. So each of the midterm examinations in the final exam for this course will test the section we're working on only. Each exam will consist of 3 longer answer, and I can't stress this enough, these are longer answer questions, right? Related to each particular philosopher, for a total of 6 questions. The questions will be designed to test both reading comprehension, so I'll frequently just grab a passage from the text and ask you to interpret it in light of another claim or something along those lines, and a more general understanding of the ideas that we've studied, right? So it might refer to something on one of these YouTube lectures, right? And ask you to critically evaluate some sort of problematic with the material, right? These questions often require students to take a critical stance toward the material and will reflect both textual material and the class discussions. Right? So the discussion forums will be also things that you'll be responsible for. Right? So with regard to taking a critical stance, boy, don't just give me what you think I want to hear. This is one of those courses where you are perfectly on strong footing and welcome and in fact encouraged to be critical of this material, of my positions, of these theorists' positions. We're not doing the reference method here, right? We are trying to sharpen our critical thinking teeth along with the study of this material. And God, you guys should be critical of this. These guys are trying to tell you what to do. You should think carefully about that, right? You should be somewhat resistant to that, and they're prepared for you to be. They all present reasons in defense of their positions. So we're going to evaluate the reasons that they give in terms of their positions and try to come to some sort of interpretation that makes a bit of sense of this material. So take a critical stance to it. Okay? So please note that these exams consist of longer answered questions. As such, and I got into some trouble with this last semester, I require a minimum of 2 paragraphs in response to each of these questions, right? 2 paragraphs of discussion, argument, reflection, exegesis, that's explanation of textual material, are expected for each response to be considered sufficient. So if you give me 1 paragraph consisting of 3 sentences, it's not sufficient. And no matter how beautifully crafted that 1 paragraph consisting of 3 sentences is, you're still not going to get a passing grade for that question. I would treat each of these questions like mini essays. There's an introduction, there's a conclusion, and 2 paragraphs minimally of argument or analysis or critique or explanation included in each of these questions. And I know it's sort of a lot, but if you look back to the course objectives, I don't have a lot of wiggle room here. Right? Oakland University wants this to be a writing intensive course, so I'm going to have to make you write. You know? So that's what I'm looking for on these exams. Right? One quick note also about minimums. I say a minimum of 2 paragraphs. That's a rule of thumb because I find anything less than that, well, it can't completely and sufficiently address the questions that I pose. My questions will frequently ask you to do sort of a couple of things: present an argument, and then take a critical stance to that argument. Analyze 3 things and, connect them, draw a distinction, or something along those lines. So drawing a distinction, you have to explain the 2 distinct things and then distinguish between them. Right? So if you're drawing a distinction between 2 distinct things, I'd say that's 3 paragraphs, because thing 1, thing 2, and how are they different? Make sense? Hopefully. Right? If you have any questions about that, feel free to email me or come by the office hours. And I'm frankly, one of my roles is gatekeeper here, and I don't like that role as an instructor. But the other one of my roles, and the big role that I do like as instructor, is somebody here to help you through your understanding of this fairly difficult material. Right? Now, midterm and final exams will be posted to Moodle a minimum of 5 days before the due dates indicated below. No late assignments will be accepted. Right? I've got a policy that handles this too, right? Unless I tell you that you have an extension, don't assume that you have an extension. If I didn't grant you an extension and I don't have your material by the due date, then I don't have your material, right? There is a missed exam policy up in the policy section. In the unfortunate event that you missed an exam due date due to serious illness, a death in the family, you must notify me via email or by telephone message with the departmental office, either preferably before the date and time in question, or within 12 hours of the deadline or due date. Otherwise, I will not be able to offer an extension. Right? That's the policy, and I think I'm being fairly reasonable here. Right? Because, I mean, you should be able to do this unless you're in a coma or something, and then we'll work it out. I'm the first to understand that life happens, right? But if life happens, right, what you need to do is let me know. And I can tell you, based on previous, I'm fairly forthcoming with extensions and flexibility with regard to the course. If you're willing to work with me, I'm very willing to work with you. Right? So, Also, another quick little policy thing that I'm seeing here that I should discuss just quickly because it's come up already in this semester. I'm getting emails from like Gmail accounts or Hotmail accounts or Yahoo accounts or Comcast accounts or whatever, right? Non-Oakland University email accounts. Well, there are a couple of things to note about email, and the important one that seems just as silly a rule to me as it seems to you, but nonetheless, all Oakland University course-related correspondence must, by Oakland University policy, occur through Oakland University email addresses. So if that you don't have that thing up and running, you should get that thing up and running because I'm technically not even supposed to reply to a non-Oakland University email address. Right? So get it up and running. IT services is there to help you. Um, and that way we will all be on the same. I, it's not even guaranteed I will get a Gmail email. The spam filter is kind of funny, right? Even though our Oakland University account is managed by Gmail, uh, I don't know why, but nonetheless, I know I get Oakland University emails, right? But I'm not sure I'm getting all of your emails from other email addresses, so don't assume I have it. The other thing to keep in mind with email is that email, as instant and as we tend to think it is, sometimes I email the guy across the hall from me, and it takes better part of a day to clear the cache and get to their inbox. Right? So it seems instant, but especially at high volume days, it's not. All right. The other thing to keep in mind with email is that I'll do my best to answer any of your questions and reply to your emails as quickly as possible. There are a couple of points, especially over reading week, where I've got a series of fairly difficult and involved exams that I'm doing, and believe me, I'm just going to be checked out during that time. So I will likely put an away response on my email and attend to the emails once I get back after, and this is during a reading week, so there's nothing due or urgent during that time. So, but otherwise, basically these online classes, the primary way you have to get in touch with me is via email. And there are a lot of you, right? So I get lots and lots and lots of emails, more in some cases than is humanly possible to respond to in a decent amount of time. There are two things that go on with that. One, I put great effort into trying to reply to them lickety split, but sometimes I get an email from a student that's just informing me of something. If that email is not pressing or doesn't seem like it needs a reply, I will save time and not reply. I'm not ignoring you. I'm reading your emails. It's just, you know, I only have 24 hours a day, and some of that's got to be sleep, right? Some of that's got to be grading, I'm teaching, I'm doing a doctorate degree, et cetera, et cetera. I'm trying to have a life on top of that, right? So I'm going to do my best to keep up with your email. Sometimes the other thing that happens is I get 10 emails asking me the same question from 10 different students. So I will send out a general email to everybody because if 10 of you have that question, 50 of you have that question. So again, I'm not ignoring you. Right? What I'm trying to do is, as efficiently and as effectively as possible, get you what you need in order to succeed with this class. Right? So that's what the deal is with email. Oakland University emails are what we'll be using to communicate. Yeah, I'm dealing with high volume emails, so I'm doing my best. Right? The best and most effective way to discuss course material with me is to come to my office hours because uh, I'm, I'm a fairly fast typist, right? I'm at about 85, 90 words per minute. But somebody who speaks at an average pace speaks at about 150, 200 words per minute. And actually, the communication is instant in a way that I'm telling you the email's not. So come see me. Right? It's the best way to get an immediate response to your questions. So, anyhow. So, what have we done? This exam policy, let me know within 12 hours, and I'm very willing to work with you because I know that life happens. Email, we just went over that. Discussion board policy, discussion board. I want you to be replying at least once to each of these forums. But again, minimums. I was at a casino just recently. Windsor's got a casino. It's the best place to grab a taxi, and you gamble a little bit while you're waiting for your cab, right? So you know that if you only bet a little bit, your return is, even if you bet, if you hit big, going to be minimal. If you placed a minimum bet, then your return is going to be minimal, right? You know this with gambling, right? If with these courses you put in the minimum amount of effort, the return in terms of the grades that you're going to get is likely to be minimal as well. I place minimums here. Basically, I'm telling you how to get a C, right? My advice with the discussion forums is engage with them. They can be fun. They can be interesting, right? With these exam questions, answer the exam question as completely and fully as possible, right? I give you the minimums because there has to be, well, there has to be a floor, right? Notice that I haven't given you a ceiling, right? So it, you can use that as your basis for understanding. So, instructional technology, everything's through Moodle, right? You'll see there will be YouTube links, there will be, all of your exams will be posted to Moodle, the discussion forums will be sort of shunted through Moodle as well. You can email me through Moodle, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So everything is through Moodle. How do you get into Moodle? If you don't know, it's the same way you get into your email. It's the same user ID and password. Lickety split, easy peasy. All right. So the other thing I will mention is that I can see how frequently you're on Moodle as well. So yeah, so keep an eye on that. It's, I believe you can see how frequently I'm on Moodle as well. So I keep an eye on that as well. All right. So everything will be posted in a timely manner, but it's your responsibility to be checking Moodle on a regular basis. For a while, I was sending out emails to everybody with 4 sections of these courses, and that's a lot of email volume. So basically it's your responsibility. Likewise, with regard to exams, I have format requirements, like in terms of the file formats that you submit, and also it's your responsibility to double check that your exam submitted properly, right? I'm not going to go chasing you for your exams. You are going to have to make sure that I have your exams. I've got the same policy with myself for, say, job applications or submission of my own assignments or submission of papers for publication in journals, that sort of thing. I submit, I double check that it's submitted properly, and that's all on me because if these journals or if these companies or if these universities don't get your stuff, well, you don't get the job, period. Right? So this is good life training at the same time. Okay, so at the bottom of page 2, I have an important dates section, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them, but 5 and 6 are the same date. So what we're looking at is the first midterm exam is going to be due by February 2nd, or 7th, rather, by 11:55 p.m. I've made the exams all due at 5 minutes to midnight on Fridays this semester, just to keep it real consistent, and just to give you the whole day with the material. I'm on campus on Fridays as well, unless there's a holiday or the sky falls or something along those lines. So that will give you access to my Friday office hours and then time to do something about what we discussed in my Friday office hours as well. So 11:55 p.m. is 5 minutes to midnight. The first midterm is due February 7th, so the latest that will be posted is February 2nd. So that's your first midterm. The second midterm is due March 21st, which again is a Friday, and again 5 days in advance that material will be posted for our review week and to give you plenty of time with the questions. All right, and again it's due at 5 minutes to midnight. The final exam for this course will be posted on April 17th and due April 25th by 11:55 p.m. Again, that's 5 minutes to midnight. All right. So you'll note that for the final exam, I give you 7 days. All right. So that's lots of time. I do that partially because through the semester, midterms frequently stagger between a number of courses. Whereas final exams, there is a final exam week, so I figure you need a couple of extra days to work on it. So you get a couple of extra days to work on it. Nota bene, note that the discussion boards for this course also close on Friday, April 25th at 11:55 p.m. Right? So, that said, about the discussion boards, conceivably, if you miss them all semester, right? On April 24th or something, you could conceivably write responses to all of them. I leave that there because this is the little bit of wiggle room you've got with your grade. It's 10% of your grade, so that's a pretty significant amount of wiggle room that you've got with your grade, right? But nonetheless, that actually circumvents all of the value that these discussion forums are going to be having. You see, the way I see it, the discussion forums are, great resources for you because the entire class becomes a think tank and trying to interpret, decipher, and critically evaluate this material. It's fairly difficult, right? So when you pay for a course like this, you get me. That's not bad. I've been at this a while. I've read this material. I kind of know it like the back of my hand. I can quote it from memory. So you get me as your guide. Right? But the other thing that you get, in addition to the written material and me and a credit through Oakland University, is a large group of people who are also concerned about reading the same material as you are. Right? So you share an interest in interpreting this material. And note also that I don't grade on a curve. There's nothing more unphilosophical than curving grades. Right? Basically, it's penalizing people or rewarding people divorced from reasons. And philosophy rests on the strength of the reasons that support a position. Right? So I don't curve. You're not actually in competition with one another in this course. You're in competition with yourselves. So the discussion forum, you've got nothing to lose, everything to gain. And if I were sitting down and trying to take a course like this, I would treat the discussion forum as practice for formulating my well thought out substantial responses to exam questions. And just as a little hint, you'll frequently see that some of my exam questions are very nearly identical to your discussion forum topics. Right? This course is laid out for you to succeed. So, right, that's what we're looking at there. So these are your important dates. Put them on your calendar, put them in your iCalendar or whatever you do, right, with that. Write them on the back of your hand, then don't wash your hand all semester. I don't care, but nonetheless, keep these important dates in mind. Let me see your reading schedule. You'll see the week of January 6th to 10th. Basically, we'll discuss the course syllabus, which I'm doing right now, course policy, which I'm doing right now. You will have an overview and a general course overview, which is redundant. I didn't realize that. I'm going to have to edit that for future semesters. Oopsie. But nonetheless, so that's what you're getting right now. The additional thing that you'll get, and I'll post this after I post this video, so almost lickety split, it should be a resource that you just have, is a pre-Socratic sort of background video and a bit of background on Socrates as well, to get you to the point where you are ready to engage with the dialogue, the apology, which you should start reading by Friday. So by Friday, I'll be posting a Socrates video where I go over the apology and the Credo, that will be a resource for that first section of the class. And like I say, this just should give you an idea of how quickly you should be following along with this material. Right? So from the 6th to the 17th, that's 11 days, we will be reading 2 dialogues, which are fairly short, from this fairly skinny book. Right? Again, I've tried to keep the reading light for you. It should be very doable for you to understand what we're aiming for rather than breadth of reading. I'm not throwing a lot of reading at you. I'm aiming for you to be able to read this deeply. Right? The catch with these readings is that I hate to say it, but you'll have to probably read it more than once to make heads or tails of it. Right? I'm fond of making this joke. Right? You see this hairline? Where does this come from? What is this guy trying to say to me? That's where it comes from. The nature of this material is, I'm not trying to trick you or be difficult, but the nature of the material is that it is difficult and subtle, right? So we're looking for a depth of understanding with this material. So as such, if you just skim through this once, you might be in trouble, right? So I would read it carefully because there is subtlety to the material. Right. So you've got 11 days with the Socrates material. Again, you've got 11 days with the Nicomachean Ethics. That's book 1, 2, and 3, which is fun stuff. Plus, you've got a week-long review to catch up with anything that maybe you've fallen apart behind on, or to look at all of this in preparation for writing your exam, which is again on the reading schedule due February 7th. All right. So that's the way this semester is going to lay out. So just be sure to follow along. There are a couple of days that I am not going to be around. I didn't put it on here, but we've got Martin Luther King Day coming up on, I believe it's the 20th. So on that day, I won't be on campus because nobody will be on campus. It's a holiday. Reading week, like I say, I'm going to be away and stressed out writing exams myself. So that week, our winter recess, I hate that term, but nonetheless, we're on recess. It's like we're in like middle school or something. Begins February 22nd, and we return on March 3rd. So I'll have an away response on my my email. I might still reply to some if I've got time, but I'm not likely to have the time. So that's the deal. That's when our reading week is. Your due dates are all listed there. Now, remember earlier I was saying I don't like to be gatekeeper. Well, let's go to the gatekeeping policies. This is why I'm going to try and end on an upbeat kind of note, but this is the ugly part of the welcome video. This is my hello, how are you? I'm looking forward to working with you. And I have to read you now the Oakland University policy on plagiarism. And you'll note that I footnoted it. It is from the student's handbook, right? Which is a document that you're responsible for. These are the regulations that that govern student conduct. And all I'm doing is quoting them. So, plagiarism. Plagiarizing the work of others. Plagiarism is using someone else's work or ideas without giving that person credit. By doing this, a student is, in effect, claiming credit for someone else's thinking. Whether the student has read or heard the information used, the student must document the source of the information. When dealing with written sources, a clear distinction should be made between quotations, which reproduce the information from the source word for word within quotation marks, and paraphrases, which digest the source of information and produce it in the student's own words. Both direct quotations and paraphrases must be documented. Even if the student rephrases, condenses, or selects from another person's work, the ideas are still the other person's, and failure to give credit constitutes misrepresentation of the student's actual work and plagiarism of another's ideas. Buying a paper or using information from the internet or World Wide Web, that's redundant. Let's hate that section. Anyhow, without attribution and handing it in as one's own work is plagiarism. End quote. That's directly from the student handbook. I've given you the link to the Dean of Students office where the handbook is published and you're responsible for it. That's what plagiarism is, and it is a big, big deal. Almost every semester I've had one or more cases of plagiarism. Like I say, I've been at this a long time. I think at every school that I've ever taught, I've had at least one case of plagiarism. At Oakland University, I'm somewhere in the mid-40s of cases that I've exercised my contractual obligation and passed on to the Dean of Students office. It's a big deal. The school treats it seriously. I treat it seriously. And the strangest thing, I've got like a wacky knack for detecting it. Right? I can read a student paper or something from the internet or any old document. And I have this weird, almost sixth sense, this intuition that allows me to determine whether or not it's likely to have been taken from another source. So I'll find it if you do it. And effectively, what plagiarizing is theft. And look at the title of the course. This is Introduction to Ethics, right? I'm especially hard on people who plagiarize in an ethics course, right? You're trying to cheat your way through ethics. Don't do it, right? There have been several high-level cases of plagiarism in the media lately, right? Deans of schools at universities have been fired for this. Entire publications have been removed from every library in Canada as a result of this. Right? At the highest level, it's a fireable offense. At a student level, well, this is what Oakland University does, and this is basically what my contract tells me to do. I've got a zero tolerance policy on plagiarism. That's just the way it is. Contractually, I'm obligated the second I detect a case of plagiarism, I have to pass it on to the Dean of Students office. Right? So any student suspected of this form of theft will be automatically passed on to an academic review board. That's through the Dean of Students office. That's just me discharging my contractual obligation. I don't do that, I could be fired. Right? So it's just what I automatically do. The way this is laid out in terms of policy at Oakland University, I'm an adequate judge of the quality of your understanding as reflected in your written work. And I am also an adequate judge as to the quality of your written work. I'm not allowed myself to determine authorship. If there's any question about authorship of the work, it's the academic review board that has to make that determination. I'm not even allowed to decide. Right? So that's just what's got to happen. Expulsion from the university is possible. Right? Suspension's more likely, but my course policy for this offense will be that you fail. You fail the course, right? Not the assignment, not the question, not the one little section of you failed a course, right? And check how much you pay for tuition. Immediately, that's over $1,000 in penalty, right? You don't, it's not worth it, right? So if you decide to go cut paste for one answer on one question on one exam, boy, is that not worth it. If you try to do it for all of them, there's no point. Drop the course now, right? If you want to engage with this material